As an artist, I am frequently looking for inspiration. But over this summer, as it would happen, inspiration found me. And this was in the shape of this art lace of Santa Muerte. She goes by many names: the beautiful girl, godmother, holy death. But in the end, she comes for everyone. Welcome to Weaving Weird Studio. My name is Sig, and this is where you and I create a little magic with every knot. It's your interest and support that allows me to contribute new content and weekly videos. Help us all grow together by tapping the subscribe bar, notification bell, and like buttons. I look forward to your comments and always value your feedback. When I begin a lace piece like this, I start with a general sketch. Now, as you can see, the sketch is a little hard to see because I didn't get a picture when I first made it. So this is after I've used it. But as you can see, I have very many general elements in this sketch because I'm not entirely sure which ones I'm going to go with. So I give myself a basic outline. And then from that outline, I start to allow myself to be a little more inspired, a little more experimental, if you will, because sometimes I'll try different motifs and I won't exactly like them. So then I'll try other motifs and see which ones work best. However, with that said, every art lace piece that I do, I began with Romanian cords. Now I'll use different yarns, different threads, depending on what it is I would like to use or what I think is going to look best in the piece. And if you're interested, and as a quick note, I will include a link to my Romanian cord tutorial in the description box below. Here you can see many examples of the Romanian cord made in different threads and then basted to the actual drawing or sketch that I did, where I'm starting to work in the outlines or the general outlining of the piece itself. Now, once I get everything outlined as much as possible, I'm going to start moving on to the different motifs. So for this particular project, I used a lot of marigolds because they're significant and have a lot of symbology in color and purpose and meaning. If you are interested in making a marigold for yours or just another project, I also have a link to this tutorial in the description box below. Now, moving on, this is when I really began to lay in those larger motifs, such as this Sacred Heart of Mary. It seemed very appropriate for this particular piece, and those of you who are familiar with Santa Muerte will understand exactly what it is I'm talking about. Otherwise, it's simply lovely, and it fits the piece beautifully, and it adds wonderful interest. Now, if you're interested in making a Sacred Heart yourself, I also have a tutorial for this in the description box below. Also, just a little side note, if you were curious as to how the hands or the skeletal hands of Santa Muerte was made, they were made using Romanian cords, just making the cord and folding and bending and crocheting them into the shape that you care to have them in. Now in this image, you can see where I'm starting to work the back grounding in. Particularly for the blue robe. You can see where the marigolds have been laid. You can also see where I began the scales as well as that Echinacea flower. The Echinacea flower, while totally not traditional, I was inspired to do it. And Echinacea has great healing properties, and that's what it's known for. I also personally like the fact that purple represents spiritual insight. Along with the healing, spiritual healing, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. And so I put a little bit of that in there. Also, as you can tell by the image on the screen, I have a tutorial for the Echinacea flower as well. So now this is a more close-up look of the skeleton face. And this is where things really start to get interesting. You can see where I've made some sun discs, kind of hearkening back to her more indigenous roots. However, the blue robe, you can see how that kind of takes you back to her more European or Spanish roots. That kind of combination or the amalgamation of cultural perceptions with regards to how the people have taken concepts that they knew and understood For you see, death has no nationality. There are no borders she does not cross. The earth is her domain. And because, of course, she will come to each and every one of us, whether we're strong or weak, rich or poor, good or bad, we will all meet her. And because of this, for those who revere her, they would rather have her as their protector and their provider for the time that they can have that kind of relationship with her before they must meet her again when it's their time to move on to the next world. In short, she judges nobody, but make no mistake, she does dole out justice. And much like the many faces she has, you can also start to see where I start bringing in depth into the face of the piece. This is where I start playing with different threads, a little bit of motion, add some flowers, add some depth to the eyes, start playing with the teeth. How do I want the shadows to fall? Where am I going to stain the thread so that it gives me kind of the look and the feel that I'm looking, that I'm trying to achieve? In addition, while each piece is different, this is about the time I start thinking in terms of trim. How am I going to trim the pieces? How is it going to play with the rest of the piece that I've already created? How am I going to mirror the flow? What colors am I going to use? These are all really important, especially if you're trying to get your piece to convey a kind of emotion or a kind of flow or give a kind of message. So even though, much like her, everyone's going to interpret different, everyone's going to get a different message, everyone's going to have a different relationship. And that's for them to decide for themselves because there's so many nuances that come into play from a personal perspective. But right now, I want it to feel right to me. I want it to play well with the vision and perspective I have for it. At this point, I began to take another look at it, but I step back from it. I start to think about, am I going to add beads? And if I'm going to add beads, where am I going to add beads? For my work personally, I don't want to add too many beads or else it becomes a beaded work. I want my work to be lace, to be crochet, to be needlework. And so as I decide to add different elements or what these elements might look like, I want to personally add them in small dosages so that they add to the piece and don't take away or distract from the piece. So you will see in the next image how there are red glass dropped beads on her earrings. Also, the ceramic skull beads that you'll see in the scales. And then just to add that last little bit of sparkle, I have Swarovski beads placed in the trim of her robe. And then, of course, as mentioned before in a previous video, the background, the fabric you use for the back of your piece. Now for this piece, I really wanted to get a nice black true velvet, but I couldn't find anything in my area that was of any real quality. And I didn't want to purchase anything offline because I can't feel it and I can't see it. And here in Alaska, it's kind of limited as to what we have access to in terms of higher quality fabrics. However, I did find a beautiful black velour that works almost as well as I imagined a true black velvet would have worked. And so I'm completely happy with the depth that this fabric gives me, particularly how it works with this piece. And I think you will agree. If you're curious to see another art lace piece I completed, you can find this particular video also linked in the description box below. But so now is time for me to say goodbye. So until I see all you wonderful and creative artists again, stay crafty, stay amazing, and above all, keep weaving your weird. Bye-bye now. Have a great weekend and stay safe out there and have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful All Saints Day.